Welcome to the Simple Minds podcast, where we look to empower and encourage real conversation amongst men everywhere by unpacking topics on self-help, philosophy, and business. Hello, simpletons! It's Travis here, your host for this week's episode. Conrad is already thrilled with my intro. Welcome, Conrad.
Good afternoon, Travis.
Thank you. We got a full house today, lads. My topic is going to be the journey and responsibility of fatherhood. I'm super pumped to get into it.
Fatherhood or the topic?
Both actually.
Nearly caught him out in that one.
Well, one, fatherhood, and two,
Shit scared me.
talking about.
Wait.
Anyway, I've gone back to my old faithful for this episode. Ronza Kappa rum, definitely.
Is that how you say it? I don't think you say
Some people say it's a Kappa.
Where's the bottle?
It's down
Oh,
here
you told me
somewhere.
the drink, didn't you?
Ron. I get a bit of Ron most nights.
It's a nice rum. Guatemala, I think.
One of the best I've drunk.
It's quite beautiful. So we're just having it on with one piece of ice. Cheers, anyway.
Cheers.
Good to see you all again.
I've got the tumbler. A tumbler.
Goes down a treat.
Yeah,
Straight to
Oh, that is
Nice.
real good.
Conrad's asleep now.
Anyway, fatherhood. Many of you probably don't know that my wife is heavily pregnant, or you guys sitting in the room do. But any Simple Minds fans,
I've been listening to the last few episodes. They should know.
they might have had a sneak peek into it. But Ashby is 38 weeks pregnant of time of recording. So by the time this comes out, I will
Pop.
will be a father, which is pretty exciting. But many think pregnancy is only a woman's journey, and I really wanted to have a discussion today that it is actually a man's journey and how to navigate that, because there's a lot of emotional things that pop up, on both sides, and especially on the male side. So I just really wanted to go through for the first little bit and just discuss the learnings and a few things that I went through. And then we'll open it up with a question. Like I said, Ashley's 9 months pregnant. It was planned. It wasn't a mistake. We're both.
Well, let's remove the word mistake.
Accident.
Thank you. Sorry. Unplanned. Never a mistake, is it? So it was planned. We're both very maternal, paternal. We love kids. Have always wanted kids. That's been a big part of our life from word go. Even when we first started dating, it was a conversation that we had very early.
On the first day?
Not first date, but within the first couple of months.
Did you ask
we
to
definitely
practice straight away?
What's that?
Did you ask for if you could practice straight away?
Well, that goes without saying. But it's definitely a conversation that we had early.
To the room by itself.
All right. No, that's all right. Anyway, so we'd been trying for a little while. We'd heard that a lot of people, can take up to 2 or 3 years to fall pregnant. We were grateful enough to, within sort of 6 months, which is a really cool thing. We tried to eliminate the stress of it all and the worry of not falling pregnant or any of that sort of connotations that go with it. So we tried to just kind of let it happen and let it be, and it did happen, which is quite beautiful. But that day, I remember it was a Friday morning. I hopped out of the shower and Ashby goes, "Oh, can you have a look at this test?" And from that moment, everything changes.
Shrunk, didn't it?
Yeah, emotionally anyway. So the journey that I've kind of been on in the last 9 months is certainly an interesting one. It's something I've never experienced in my life. But it's something that I've really enjoyed as well, even though some of the moments you kind of beating yourself over the head. You're going, holy crap, what am I doing? But it's still a beautiful thing. So a couple of points that I really struggled with. One was the negativity, because the amount of people that you speak to, or you say that you're your wife, and you say that you're pregnant, and the first thing that they say to you is their negative story about birth. Or their, the typical sleep connotation of, get ready for no sleep. And but the one that kind of affected us the most was the birthing, because we really want to see it as the whole journey. It's not just the birth as being, the destination. Very cliche, I know. But yeah, everyone not everyone, but a lot of people that we speak to really had a negative outlook on the birth. And it took a lot for Ashby and I to flip that and look at it as a positive thing and as a beautiful thing. And that took a lot of communication between the two of us to do that. I don't know if you guys have had the same sort of stories when you went through. So to give the listening group some background, there's 4 of us currently here. So Matt, you've got 2 children under 5.
7 and 4.
7 and 4, sorry.
And 1 on the way.
1 on the way. Jacob, you have...
Yeah, Henry's 18 months and then another one due in 3 months.
There you go. Conrad, you've got 1 that you know of?
Oh my God. Yes, I have one daughter who's 18 turning 19. Yeah. 19.
Yeah. Michael?
Yeah, I've got 2 kids, or 1 adult and 1 semi-kid.
Yeah.
Emma is 18, turning 19, and Sammy has just turned sweet 16.
It's a baby goat.
Wow.
And I'm childless.
And childless. Still practicing.
Still practicing.
Although
Still that boy.
To a child in the sense that she's tiny.
Oh, that's wrong on so many levels.
Yeah.
You sick
No,
bastard.
stature-wise, she's tiny.
Stop.
Yeah, moving on.
Anyway, the second point that we really struggled with early on was once we found out we were pregnant, that was the what the fuck moments, I call them. And it's you're looking at your partner and you're going, what the fuck have we just done?
Do you need me to explain to you?
That's what happened.
Yeah.
Happened with the stalk one day.
No, but like even for people like Ashby and I that we so wanted children, that doubt still crept into the initial 3 to 5 months or 4 months.
So what sort of doubt? What was in your head? Like, what was the doubt? Just like, what is life going to be like?
Yeah, because it's such a change. Like it's it's just holy crap. Have we made the right decision? Because obviously you can't take it back now. Like it's have we made the right decision? Like, is this really what we want? We've been so sure of that. Obviously those doubts. So
Second guessing, questioning what's going on. Yeah.
So
Extra glass of shardy.
well, the thing that kind of made it right for us is, I know it's probably bad to say, but we looked at each other and go, you know what? There's so many people out there that shouldn't have children and don't want to have children, and they end up fine. Like, we want to have children. We want to create a beautiful family and a beautiful environment to bring up children. I think we're going to just be fine. So that's one tool that we used very early on. Not so much now. We've kind of passed that stage to get through those self-doubt issues that we had.
Forget the fact that you can just look to your parents, that they raised 2 good kids. You went straight to the dog side. Very interesting case.
Well, it is though, but that's something that we sort of looked at each other. A lot of people don't want to have kids and they sort of work out fine. So
Yeah, I don't remember there being negative talk, I suppose.
Really?
Your life not really. I don't remember people coming up saying, the birth, this, that, although looking back now, it's a long and painful and amazing and lovely and like emotional roller coaster just having kids, like not just the birth, but
Yeah, the birth's actually
Right
the
away.
start
Yeah,
line, not the destination.
Yeah.
because you probably, if you really knew how much of a change it makes, you maybe never would have kids really. But I would never go back. Like, it's one of these weird sort of.
I just saw you go through that physical, mental, all of the one thing right then.
What you don't know can't hurt you, really, does it?
Yeah. But I don't remember negative stuff. I mean, we weren't married at the time and we sort of we just
Did you plan it?
Yeah, sort of. It was like, let's just see what happens. Not even let's have a kid. It was just like, My
sex.
sister.
Protection out the window.
Pretty much, and it happened like within a month. Like
Oh,
it was
wow.
like suddenly, and my sister had a baby like I think that year.
Was that frowned upon in the 40s?
That's a bit of a change. Late 90s. But so I mean, Joanne was 8 months pregnant. We thought towards the end Emma was going to be born in a couple of months. We may as well get married, so we got married down at Trig. And so Joanne has got the big bump at the time. But yeah, the negative part, I don't know. Maybe it's something you block out. I don't know.
Yeah. As a male, the one thing that I probably struggled with early on was the attention. Not the attention in as the word attention, but everything goes to the baby, and then even so it goes to the baby primary, and then it goes to Ashby, and then sort of to the husband. And from the moment that you tell people, because we didn't tell people for a fair while, we tried to hold off because we sort of wanted to be Ashby and Travis for as long as we could, rather than sort of the impending parents.
That's
It's
cute.
interesting.
Because you'll understand why when we get into the fear. But that's the one thing I struggled with for a while, and then that real selflessness started to kick in, and that sort of I really needed to be as selfless as possible and give everything to Ashby and the child, and that meant that people were going to come around and talk, and they're going to talk to Ashby about the child and me about the child and about Ashby, and it's not on me. So early on, definitely it was something that I had to grasp with, and the way I kind of figured that out was a fair bit of self-reflection, and then just being grateful for the situation, and then that sort of kind of subsided and went away. So did anyone have any...
I very much felt that as well, especially when Ainsley was pregnant the first time, is that it was something that we discussed, that we were deliberately trying to do. And there's almost 3 timelines. There's the wanting to have a baby to getting pregnant, and that was all about, like, for me, I learned about cycles and timing, and it was like this little project for me. And then we got pregnant, and I was like, cool, done. But then it almost, for the pregnancy, and physically and mentally, my role was kind of done, and it was no longer at all about me. It was very much about like Ainsley being pregnant, and like
in your mind, or in both.
My perception of the situation, like in my mind, I was still very much a part of it. I think that's potentially something that Travis is feeling as well. But no one ever asked me how I was feeling. No one ever asked, like, how are you feeling about the pregnancy? How is Ainsley feeling? How's she progressing? How's she feeling about the birth? So it's kind of never, you were almost a shadow a little bit. And so that second timeline was all about Ainsley and the pregnancy. And funnily enough, when you're expecting, that's the end of the tunnel. The birth is this big thing that you kind of, what's going to happen? Ainsley, of course, was potentially more fearful because she had the one who had to go through it. But I found it especially tough as the father, being it's something that was physically happening to her that I couldn't control, that I couldn't do for her, that nothing I could do could take that pain away. And therefore I was very much out of and I'm a person who, through sport, through business, through everything I try and do, it's something that I can generally, if I do this, I can have some sort of control over the situation. Whereas birth is something I feared a little bit because there was doctors, nurses, Ainsley. I was just there to hold her hand and support her. And of course there's things you can do to calm them and help them breathe, and you very much play a role, but you're a very small part of that. So for me, that was one aspect of it's just being used to being someone who's in control and being a leader, and therefore, but then being in the sidelines and being in the shadow. But then as soon as Henry was born, and especially now 18 months later, my fears, now that Ainsley's pregnant again, are fairly minimal. I know that the birth is just, granted it's a huge thing for her, but for me it's a tiny part of it. It's 24 hours over a 18 plus year lifespan. So they're pregnant for 9 months. The birth is a very, very small part of that. And then, granted, that'll potentially be controversial with some women that listen. But the life of the child and raising them and getting up and all their going to school and their graduation, that's the part of it. And that's where you as a dad can have a massive impact. So whilst I had fears, especially during Ainsley's first pregnancy, that I wasn't I didn't have the potential to be involved. As soon as Henry was born, I then kind of went, cool, now is my chance to shine, sort of thing. But during the first 6 months, while the child is extremely dependent on the mother for feeding and nurturing, you do feel very left out. But now that he's 18 months old and he's eating regular foods, we have the 50-50 potential to raise him, and now I feel a bigger part of it again.
Yeah. Scariest part for me was the thing that I still to this day is imprinted in my emotions is the leaving the hospital after 4 days.
Yeah.
You've got the child, right? And you've had these people around you the whole time, and I go home at night for a couple hours sleep, come back, and the nurses are there looking after Joanne and the baby, and then suddenly it's like you're signing out, and they're not even waving at the door like it's see ya, and you're putting the kid in the car seat in the car, and that is when your mind just goes, fuck. I'm driving back and you're just looking back on what the hell are we doing here? That is the scariest.
They don't even check if it's your baby.
Not even scary, just the most surreal feeling in the world. And that's the bit that I really remember from it. And then you just kick in, you just get into the habits, and it's hard and it's amazing, and you then just go through the roller coaster of growing up, like with the kids. So
Another thing that I grappled with early, I don't know if anyone else can relate to this, is just the responsibility piece of, we spoke about in the previous episodes how the male was sort of been the breadwinner for a long time, and that's obviously changing, but it's still biologically imprinted into us. That was very early, one of my troubles of, how am I going to provide, how are we going to provide, and that was dealt through communication with Ashby in managing both our expectations of the situation, and we communicated on that a lot, and we live very simple lives anyway, and it's not, and we spoke about what we wanted in the next 5 years, how we wanted to bring up our kids, to relieve some of that, I guess, pressure that I put on myself, to, give my kids a better life than, no, I'm not saying I had a bad life, but I want to give them the most. I want to give them the best.
That's a trap anyway. I mean,
yeah.
Because we had this conversation with my business partner Shane about the house you grew up in versus the house you own, and you always want to do better, but is that in some way, shape or form allowing you to discount exactly where you came from, and was that bad? We've got people that grow up in, and I grew up in sharing a bedroom for most of my life with my mum and dad. We grew up in a 3x1, then 3x2 type house, and we had three children. So I shared my bedroom with my sister or with my brother most of my life up until I left home. And then you start seeing people that turn up in your office with 4x2s, 4x3s, 5x3s houses we're talking about, but they've got no children or one child. And why? Because they want this bigger and better thing for their family. Or is that just an excuse to have and acquire things, as opposed to going through the experience of having a child? I think when you want to be simple and you want to honour the situation, it is just being there in whatever shape or form your role dictates. And that role will be communicated between yourself and your partner. What is it that you want me to do? And how are you going to see me show that up? Because I think that's the most important piece.
Yeah, and you'll have people from all angles of life telling you what you need to do, what you should do, reading books about it. So you've got all this information. Do we allow the baby to come into our bed at night? Like, all these little things start to play at you, and you question if you're doing the right thing. So if you try, I think your communication already sounds like it's the perfect start, because you're talking about it and sort of maybe filtering out. Obviously, you take advice from people.
Yeah,
but you kind of then just go with the flow of it, and whatever you do is kind of, you just got to trust in yourself that you've done the right thing.
Been told just go with that instinct a fair bit.
My toughest one was that my daughter wasn't planned.
And,
I think I'm probably the only one in this room that's been there. I'm not the only one in society, which is why I do take umbrage about the word mistake.
Yeah.
So the initial shock in finding out, and I was in the middle of climbing the corporate ladder. I was in the middle of a massive property development at the same time, and straight away you went to the point of, well, fuck, how do I provide when I've committed myself in so many different ways? Can I be the best version of myself in that relationship when it hasn't been planned for? You know, I wanted to provide more for my family than what my dad did. That's, you know, but then, you know, life taught me, was that such a bad thing? And that's where it comes from for me. So, okay, well, fine, I can take more from my family than what I give them any credit for. And that's the real issue, is that I did go down that path, and I was thrust down that path, and it was, you know, up until the moment Jacqueline was born, it was probably the most scariest part of my life to that point. It was 9 months worth of, I would honestly turn it around. So the mental trauma I put myself through, because it didn't tick the box that I had the vision that I wanted, was tragic. And I think in a large part that set me up for the failed relationship that came post that. You know, I still valued my daughter post that, but the you know, postnatal depression, I didn't have that, but I did have some issues that came of that, which didn't allow that relationship to go for longer than a year post that, and then became a single dad for 12 years. So fear is real, and it permeates itself through a lot of ways. And the biggest thing that I learned from that is that you need to speak about these things.
Yeah.
Ideally with a listening and concerning partner, at worst somebody, because we are who we are.
Well, that's basically my question to everyone. What is or was your biggest fear in becoming a father? You know, I'll start us off, and my biggest fear was that my relationship with my wife will change, because Ashby and I, like, before we met, I had no understanding of being able to love someone more than myself, or put someone first before myself. You know, obviously that's going to happen again once we have children, and that's what she's taught me. So I didn't want our relationship to change, and it's taken me a while, and it's only in probably the last month or so that I've really understood that if I don't want it to change, then I'm the only one I'm the gatekeeper of the keys, same as Ashby, where we are the people that can either allow it to change or not allow it to change. And that's something that we've sort of communicated too, because I know that's been a major fear of Ashby as well. And that's probably one of the biggest things that I've had to grapple with, because you know, we love our life so much now, but we love our relationship where it is at, and that's one thing that we sort of fear.
It will change.
Yeah,
it will.
But it's meant to.
Yeah, of course. It has to.
It has to change, and I'll challenge your definition of what you understand as unconditional love right now.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe unconditional love exists in its purity between adults as it does between a parent and a child.
Which I don't know that yet.
That same thought process came into my mind, having William, having our second, because I've then had this daughter. I've had her for a few years, Olivia, and I'm like, how could I possibly love another, you know, child coming in as much as I love this one? And then you sort of, you know, you go through those phases, and it's the same. It's you're right. I agree with you on the unconditional. Like, there's more of a decision made with your partner, but with the child, it's biologically a child. Like, you know, and there's
you just love the first one just a little bit more.
Oh shit! But that's
That's why I stopped at one.
That's something I get to learn in the next sort of 6 weeks, which I'm very excited about.
Oh, it's just the mind just is blown. It's like,
And when she's born, did I pick a girl on that poll?
The sweep, I don't know.
Oh man, good luck.
Yes, we're running a poll for date of birth and
if you'd like to get involved,
and sex.
Well, if anyone wants, this would probably be too late anyway. Anyway, fears. Justin, you don't have children.
But you thought about it.
Talk to me about it.
We've talked about it quite a few times, which is interesting. For us, has been interesting. My wife is a couple years older than me. So what's put a little bit of tension sometimes in the relationship has been my ambition versus her desire and fear of her body clock. So she's now 32 and I'm 29, well, she's about to turn 32, 31. But anyway, the point is that she's very scared of the body clock situation, and I guess we've had a pretty good life and we've wanted to do stuff for us, and it's a little bit selfish, and so there's that battle between kind of getting certain things out of the system and the fear of, like, as bad as it sounds, the
FOMO.
discomfort of having a child, like all the constraints that kind of can come with that. And the flip side is kind of like what you're talking about a little bit as well, is like, well, it depends on how you flip it. It doesn't have to be a constraint. It doesn't have to be a hindrance in having a child. So my personal biggest fear is, have I achieved what I wanted to achieve to this point? Again, similar back to that, it's weird. I guess it's maybe human nature that, or maybe it's males, that we kind of want to give our children better than what we had. So that's been a lot of my driver. My ambition has come from, like, we didn't grow up that amazing either. And so, like, am I financially secure? Have I ticked off what I wanted to tick off? Which some of them are bullshit. So look, there's some of our fears, but we've come to, like, yep, we're gonna, so within the year, within this year, we're going to be trying. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there fear there that, because it may take 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, so however long, or is that not even a fear that you're thinking about? It's just going
to... to me, that's not really a fear. I feel like for my wife, that's probably more a fear.
It's got the ticking.
Yeah, for me, I'm not that fearful of that. I'm not even fearful of the relationship changing, because, like, even when we got married, like, my wife was like, oh, it's going to be different. I'm like, no, it's fucking not. Like, and even if it is, like, as you said, I'm going through some big decisions at the moment, and you make of it what you make of it through communication. And I think I've been aware, and I'm okay with that. We communicate fairly well as well. So, yeah, I think for me, over the last few years, it's really just been the conflict between ambition and commitment, to be brutally honest, but getting closer to...
But you probably shouldn't attach the ambition to, if you have a kid, the ambition stops.
No, I know.
Yeah, that's a challenge. Like I say, having a third...
Talking about where you'd like to be
for having
financially,
Yeah, I want to make sure that you feel comfortable, bringing the child,
good
like,
luck.
Yeah, that's it.
Exactly. There's never a right time.
There's
really,
never a right time.
and that's where we've come to as well. Like,
And that's where the
there's never
stress
a
of
right time.
the people that my sister struggled to have or conceive their first child and went to birthing helping people and all that naturopathy, and it's when she threw all of that stuff out and just gave up the planning side that it happened. And so sometimes the contrived nature of trying to dictate when that happens causes the body to reject that anyway.
Our friend tried for 10 years. She was 42. And then they finally came to the they accepted that they weren't going to have a child. Went to India for 6 weeks, relaxed, had a holiday, bang, pregnant.
It's quite common people to get pregnant on holidays.
10 years.
Particularly in India, mate. It's a very populated place on the planet. To all our Indian friends out there.
It's the Kama Sutra side of it.
What about you, Matt? Third one on the way.
Yeah, look, well, the biggest challenge...
Matt Daddy.
Yeah. Well, for starters, in our current sort of society and culture, most people are only having one or two.
Yeah.
It's a lot less common to then have 3 or more. And my biggest conflict is time. So still having a lot of ambition. A lot of that ambition is driven towards wanting to provide, obviously, for the family, but also wanting to be, a father that's in their lives and doing, a lot with them. So as you add an additional child on, and I'm looking at, 3 shortly, that's the biggest difficulty. Have I got truly the time to do both? The answer is yes, I do. It's just how how disciplined I am, what perspective I take, and starting to really break down, like, what does quality versus quantity time look like? How present am I in certain situations? And I think you sort of asked the question, is there anything I do differently? And a third one in, no, other than just maybe take a little bit more time to try and be more present. But I can't say that's just a reflection point anyway. I can't say that I wasn't through both of those experiences. And it's the birth is one thing. It's not that. I mean, we had 2 Tash had 2 emergency seizures. So they weren't exactly.
You're running a book on a third.
Yeah, well, it won't be emergency. It'll be planned. It has to be. So they weren't. They were still amazing experiences, but they were stressful experiences. And to come back to your point, Jacob, it was one of the first times where you really can't control anything, and you've just got to stand there and do nothing, which is almost worse as men. And I think if we come back to a lot of topics we've discussed over the last few weeks, this physicality and masculinity, if we've got all this adrenaline pumping, but we're literally standing still, like we've got no way of like pushing that through. You know what I mean? We've got no movement or a way to be. But for me, it's more after the birth and longer term. Just being the best person I can be.
I think I've got a few big lessons to learn in the next 3 weeks.
Let's get some kettlebells for the hospital.
Can anyone touch on the emotional roller coaster that they went through in the first 4 months of finding out? Did you have those what the fuck moments, or did you have those?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm still doing it now with the third.
So yeah, because like when I initially started going through them, I was like, oh geez, am I the only person that will be going through this?
No, you're exactly right. It becomes very natural.
Yeah.
But then you'll have the moments. I remember Emma was sitting in the sunlight as a little baby.
Yeah.
Like she had a little bit jaundice, so we had to put her in the sunlight, so a vampire or something like that too.
Yeah.
She was the milkman's kid, had a bit of colour.
But just suddenly you just find yourself like just staring, going,
Oh, it's
the wonder of it, and sort of
more the first 4 months of the pregnancy rather than
the
birth. Because I think once the birth comes, it's a whole different story.
But
But
tragic. For me, it was tragic.
yeah, exactly. Because I think like it's an emotional roller coaster, and men undervalue the emotional change that you actually go through in that first 4.5 months. And because no one actually speaks to you about the pregnancy or how you're feeling, it's quite difficult to process those emotions if you're not talking to your partner, or if you're not talking.
Well, you
to
don't
someone.
talk to anyone, right? Typically, you hide it for the first at least 8 to 10, mostly 12 plus, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, now I can talk about it. Oh, hang on.
But we've all talked about, and so have I. I mean, and I came across this quote post being a father, which was quite an interesting one, because pre being a father, and stepping into what my greatest fear was about adequacy and being inadequate. Right? And then you come across that Marianne Williamson quote where it says, "Our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure." So when you look at the flip side of that opportunity, the fear of inadequacy is the easiest thing to see. Okay, but then there's the opportunity to show up, and that's where the real fear is: will I show up? You can show up. I mean, the fact that you've been blessed with a child, is one of the miracles that nature's blessed upon every human being. It's not a guaranteed certainty. So I believe if you're able to produce a child, you're able to step into that greatness and be able to father that child. And the work I've done on myself post Jacqueline's birth, the first 4 years is the most important. That's when all the programming's done. Psychologists will tell you that. So how you choose to show up is very important in those 4 years, not in the 9 months prior leading up. So when I look at myself and I rate myself on a scorecard, I believe I showed up. Could I have showed up better? Yeah, everything can happen better. But
you can't put yourself down or sort of
regret. You can't have regrets, but you can learn, because through learning you're going to be able to then pass on knowledge.
Pass on. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But if I was audacious enough to say that I was a fucking amazing dad, then what are you learning? You're not. So there are things you do differently, and it's a blessing in disguise for me, because I was a workaholic, and I mean at times, when you love your job, that's a problem, and you'll have this. And so the challenge for you then is to understand that doing your job isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's not a bad thing, and you need to deal with that time away from the family and time away from your child, and acknowledges, well, that's your role at the moment. The fact that you love doing it and you'll say yes to most jobs is okay. Through communication with your partner, you'll say, well, fine, do you mind, this is what my schedule's looking like, is that okay with you, or is it not? Do you need more time from me? They're the things you probably need to do. They're the things I didn't do a lot of. I just went straight into hypervigilant dad mode, as my dad was, working 2 jobs and all that type of stuff. That was my role model. And I just fell into those shoes. And then that opened up all the other cracks. So, again, our greatest fear is not that we're inadequate. You're completely adequate. our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. And I think if you can sit and reflect on that, the whole quote if you need to, but even those 2 sentences, and just see how that sits with you, to me that's a really liberating space to be, because every single one of us went around here, apart from Justin, went into a space of inadequacy. And I think if we do that, we are selling ourselves short.
What about the physical aspect? Because obviously there's a massive physical change from Ash's side, obviously, during the pregnancy. The body changes fairly considerably. How have you been with that? I mean,
to be honest, it hasn't bothered me a whole heap. This is going to sound so corny, but like, I'm more attracted to Ashley's personality and mine than probably her body. I know that sounds kind of a bit weird, but even though she is pregnant, I've tried to see the sexy side of her being pregnant, or the beautiful side of her being pregnant, and there's something that she's needed throughout the pregnancy is to be reaffirmed, because obviously being pregnant, and so
what's her love language?
Well, it used to.
Touch?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it used to be affirmation, but it's really gone away from that, and it's gone pretty much primarily to touch.
Yeah.
And but as a female who looks after herself, goes to the gym, that sort of thing, her body changing has been a massive roller coaster ride for her. And me affirming her in comments of "you are beautiful," "you still are sexy to me," "you still turn me on," etc. It's almost like you comes back around onto you, and you're like, you believe that, even that I do. But it's funny how that positive language and that positive talk has really benefited both of us, because it's helped her with her confidence of her changing body, because that's something that she was probably as well very worried about. And then it's helped me still being in touch with her sexually, emotionally.
Yeah. Because then the birth itself is another physical aspect that is quite confronting.
Yeah.
Because you don't usually see your partner in that. Well, you never see your partner in that situation of kind of pain and exposed, and I said people around you like doctors, nurses. It's a really bizarre place. Looking back, it probably seems more bizarre than it actually was at the time, but that's the next sort of stage, and then leaving the hospital.
Well, anyway, go, Justin.
Just quickly, like the workaholism component, or the work piece and the time piece, because I know that's a common one. Maybe it's probably 2 questions. Have you considered like that, and I guess like was it like for you, Conrad? Because I even feel that in small dosages, even with just my team. Obviously, it's not a kid, but like feeling guilty of going in one way or the other. Like, did you feel a lot of guilt, and how did you overcome that? Have you considered it, Hader? Because like you work hard as well.
Do you want to go first, Conrad?
I don't. I didn't feel guilt. I felt more. I've dealt with guilt fairly early in life, so I don't believe guilt was the issue. The real issue for me was I was focused on what I was trying to provide for my family, above and beyond even acknowledging the inadequacies that were showing up in the relationship. Thinking that if I earned more and provided more, that would disappear.
Yeah.
Because again, being thrown into, an unplanned pregnancy, Jacqueline wasn't conceived in an unloving relationship. So there was boxes ticked, but I went straight to, and you just go straight to the role model.
Yeah.
My role model was my father.
Yeah.
My father, for a large part of my life, worked 2 jobs.
Just work.
I never saw him.
Yeah. Maybe more for Matt. Have you battled with this, with the guilt between that torn between, and like?
I do.
Is that guilt, like, I'm just trying to, because I feel like I'm asking for me, because with the fear piece, that's what I've touched on too, I guess, which is the time.
You do. I do. So I do feel guilt, and I feel guilt probably, if honestly, wherever I am, in a sense. So I'll always be, but I'll always prioritize, and whatever I believe is the most important and the most important place to be, I'm there. Like I get to pretty much anything that I consider important at school, but I'm always like, oh, the officer's going on there. So I'm always having to prioritize at a high level. I don't necessarily sit there and ever feel any deep guilt, but it's always like, oh, okay. And it's good to come back to, because like, all right, let's say it's Saturday and there's a chance to go and grab a bit of a coffee and see the kids play on a playground and then head off to swimming. All right, am I going to work this Saturday? Maybe, as long as it's important enough. So you've got these sort of
But it's communication, right? So
and then it's communication.
You've got to communicate it with the missus.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing and why you're doing it.
But also to yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
Because
You've got to reconcile within yourself first.
Yeah.
That's what I say. I don't feel guilt because I knew why I was doing it. What I missed was communicating back to my partner.
Yeah. I've knowingly made the decision to put my family first in the next 4 or 5 years. But saying that, I'll do what I need to do.
Well, that's it, because you've got to provide too.
Yeah.
So you can't. Sometimes me not hanging out with them is actually putting them first,
That's where the
and
conflict.
that's a conflict.
That's a really.
But it's how that's communicated.
Yeah.
Right?
So ask me in 2 years whether if I've done that well or not. I'm not sure. But I've consciously made that decision that I will sacrifice some of my progress within business to put my family first. But I will do what I need to do to provide for them.
But I don't know whether you can. I mean, it's funny, right? Because it talks about here guilt being guilt is defined as a deep feeling of remorse for an act which we may or may not have occurred in the past. Therefore, guilt becomes a past experience which is renewed in the present moment, and that is wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Because then you bring it, you're attaching to your past. Because everything, as much as I might have assessed and judged my father for certain things he's done in his life, I've come back to the realisation now in my adulthood that everything was purposeful and everything was fine. It's just I didn't communicate it, which is what I needed to do to get better. So if you need to work 7 days for the next 3 years of your life, provided that ticks the box with the missus, she knows why you're doing it and she agrees with that, then great. If she doesn't, then that's okay, you agree on other terms. If she doesn't agree and you don't agree with it, then you've got a different problem.
Because that was where it creates a really paradox of like family first might be working 7 days a week.
Yeah, exactly.
Not
Right.
present. So it's like it's a weird paradox, which is why I ask. And it's like
So it's communicating is what we
really
value.
interesting.
Well, yeah, in closing, like the reason I brought this topic to the table because I felt communication was the biggest driving factor that allowed me to get through the first 9 months. Whether if that will help in the next 9 months, I think it will.
Because Ashby's parents and how she was brought up, and the way your parents and you were brought up were very different.
Exactly. Anyway, that's it for this episode. If you're listening on iTunes, then be sure to leave a review for the show and tell us what you think.
Or even if you're not, just jump over there. Just do it.
We're also on Spotify and YouTube. At which case, leave a comment, like. Don't leave a dislike, or even subscribe to the channel. We appreciate any support that you have for the show, and remember, make sure you put in the comments Travis is your favourite host.
Throw $5 notes and not coins to it.
Hopefully we've stimulated your need to communicate with someone close to you. That's definitely why
Or moisten your
I'm in
loins
on
to go
this.
and procreate.
Absolutely. Thank you, and bye for now.
See ya.
Ciao.
Bye.
I waited 42 minutes to say that.